So, I'm sure a lot of us can remember a lot of things we did as children or teenagers or even as adults that were not wise decisions. A few for myself were eating Doritos off the ground at recess in elementary school. They were just there. I just thought that would be a good idea. Allowing my friend to hang off the side of a moving car. When my chemistry teacher in high school told us to just waft the chemical towards our nose, I thought it would be a better idea to just directly inhale it. Lying about where I was on a Friday night. I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry. But one that makes me laugh the most is that when I had my first job when I was 15, it was at Shriner's Diner in Appleton, Wisconsin. It's a hot spot for foodies. It was only 8 tables, and it had 2 U-shaped counters, and my title was coffee hostess. So I knew how to make a mean cup of coffee, and I could pour that pot at any angle or any height. And also, I had to run the cash register. And because a large majority of our clientele was over the age of 65, we gave a senior discount. So after a busy breakfast morning, a gentleman came to check out, and before I rang him up, I said, "You need the senior discount, right?" And he looked at me, kind of shocked, a little ticked off, because he was probably only 50 years old, okay? And annoyed that this 15-year-old girl offered him a senior discount. I just kind of apologized, checked him out, and never again have I ever asked anyone for a senior discount. The wisdom of my 15-year-old self. Hopefully, I've grown a little bit more in my insight over the years. The past few weeks, Lance has started us on a journey into the book of James where we are discovering some practical and understandable steps to assembling a life that has strength, meaning, and purpose. One component from the book of James that adds value to our lives is wisdom. And again, this study makes me laugh because when I had to write this message, I said, "Oh, sure, this is a great idea." And I chose to do this and summer adventure and have my kids at home during the summer. Not the best choice. But the funny thing is that God, He just so effortlessly and lovingly reminds me of where we need to have a better grasp on wisdom in our lives. You know, we all live in a world of constant dinging of notifications, telemarketer calls, social media posts, emails, video clips, articles upon articles, and it can be challenging to daily wade through it all. There are opinions and answers and passionate people everywhere. So how do we choose to decide who and what to listen to? It's confusing, and at the same time, it is exhausting. The beautiful thing is that God provided His word, His truth in the Bible, and He wants us to have a relationship with us where we can go to Him. It's up to us to choose to dig into that, to be able to use it as a way to discern what direction God wants us to travel us through this complicated life of ours. The book of James was written by Jesus' brother, which some of us have not realized that Jesus even had siblings. I mean, can you even imagine growing up with a perfect sibling? There was no way James could ever say, "Oh, Jesus did that," right? After Jesus died and was resurrected, this letter was written to encourage believers just to practice what you preach. And so we're going to walk through a passage in James 3 today to figure out how that applies to our wisdom in our own lives. James 3:13 says this, "Do you want to be counted wise, to build a reputation for wisdom? Here's what you do. Live well, live wisely, live humbly. It's the way you live, not the way you talk, that counts." So do you want to be counted as wise? I would like to have a wise reputation and to be that trusted friend people can go to when they need someone. I think we can all remember someone in our life that has spoken to us, and we just appreciate their sage advice. When I think of wisdom, I do think of owls, specifically the owl from the old Tootsie Pop commercial. You know, how many licks does it get to take to the center of the Tootsie Pop? Well, I came across this English poem that dates back to 1875. It's a children's poem, and it was called The Wise Old Owl, and it really sums up everything. A wise old owl lived in an oak. The more he saw, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't we be like that wise old bird? You know, it's true. As we go through life, the more we see, the less we need to speak carelessly, and we just need to truly listen. As we live wisely and humbly, we need to choose to think before we speak. James is right. It's the way you live, it's not the way you talk that counts. Without even understanding, at times, our lives are set apart by God, and it is becoming an example of understanding and perceptiveness to others. I think Ian Morgan Crone, in his book, Chasing Francis, he really put this wonderfully. If Francis of Assisi were alive today, he'd say to our church community relies too much on words to tell others about our faith. For Francis, the gathered community was a potent form of witness. And he convinced that's how we live together is what attracts people to our faith. Are we attracting people to faith with our words, or just simply living in community with others? By honoring God on a daily basis, drawing others into our life, it allows them to question. It leaves them wondering and asking, why do you choose to live your life like this, to live humbly? It's then a conversation of where we get to impart our own wisdom, where we're getting it from. We're speaking lovingly into their lives, and then we are pointing them back towards Jesus. Right before Eric and I got married, there was this wood area on the front of his house, and it was not well sealed, and so it was starting to rot. And since I had watched plenty of HGTV, I thought, we should fix this ourselves. We can totally do this. First unwise choice. So the two of us took one Saturday, and we ripped off all of the wood off the front of the house. Second unwise choice. Later realizing there was a window issue as well. So after a few trips to the Home Depot, some really fun premarital teamwork discussions, we decided to call a professional. The first one that came over was a company that doesn't leave your home without some kind of sales manipulation, your signature, and pretty much a vial of blood. We were very desperate at that point, and we were a little too trusting, and unfortunately, we went with them. Third unwise choice. By the time our wedding rolled around, we got in our final numbers, which humorously was captured by our wedding photographer. Yes. The project eventually was finished, but not without a bunch of unanswered promises along the way, and all of the parties had made some unwise decisions. Now, you're not going to be able to Google wisdom when you need it. However, it might be a new app on Alexa. I'm not sure. But it's important for us to determine what true wisdom looks and sounds like for ourselves and those we act with. And this is why James goes on to say this. Mean-spirited ambition isn't wisdom. Boasting that you are wise isn't wisdom. Twisting the truth to make yourself sound wise is not wisdom. It's the furthest thing from wisdom. It's animal cunning, devilish conniving. Whenever you're trying to look better than others or get the better of others, things fall apart and everyone ends up at each other's throats. The Message version really paints the word picture for us. We don't want to be going around assuring others of our own wisdom, being untruthful about the facts so you come out looking better. Cunning, conniving, in the end, it is all going to fall apart. I think this part of the text reminds me of what the root of the Christian faith is. It's when we think we can get through this life on our own. We are going to do everything in our power to look good, have things go our own way. We may listen to people that don't have our best interest in mind, but in the end, it's going to leave us emotionally in debt and spiritually, and we're wondering why we ripped off the front of our house to begin with. Are you in that place today? we then have to realize we cannot do this life on our own. And we desperately need God's grace, his love, and his wisdom to be wholly a part of our lives. For those of us choosing to have a healthy relationship with Jesus, we move from manipulating other people to get what we want to serving them in a way Jesus would have. And I can imagine that as James wrote this, he was thinking of his brother, how he modeled wisdom throughout his life. And he contrasted that with the people who twisted their wisdom, like the Pharisees, against him. James goes on to give a clear picture, writing real wisdom, God's wisdom, begins with a holy life, and it's characterized by getting along with others. It's gentle and reasonable, overflowing with mercy and blessings, not hot one day and cold the next, not two-faced. In pursuit of a holy life, one that God says, well done, when we enter the gates of heaven and into his loving embrace. His wisdom looks like this. It's pure. It seeks peace. It's always gentle, willing to yield to others, merciful, fruitful. It shows no favoritism, and it's sincere. It's really beautiful when we go in his direction of wisdom. By choosing his way, our lives, they're not always going to be perfect by the world's standards, and it's kind of confusing to others. But again, we'll be noticed and at times admired for how we chose to follow him. So how do we go about cultivating wisdom in our own lives? When I was in elementary school learning grammar, the only word that I really remember the definition of is a noun. And my daughter comes home and she tells me all these words she learned. And I just nod and be like, yes, because I know she's way smarter than I am. But the definition of a noun is a person, place, or thing. And I feel like all of those ideas can help us as we head towards our life, look at different aspects, because each of us have different ways that cause us to grow and also fall off track at times. So as we start with persons, like Lance mentioned a few weeks ago, we are kind of reading along in Proverbs through the month of July, and it has words from one of the wisest kings whom God cherished. The book was written by King Solomon, which was the son of King David. And before King David died, he gave advice to his son, which if I could sum it up, it would say this: be faithful to God, honor him, listen to his truth, and in turn, he will be faithful to you. Solomon trusted his father. He knew he was wise. And so one night in a dream, God asked him if he could want anything in the world, what would it be? And Solomon chose wisdom, an amazing example of what probably most people wouldn't choose first. So he becomes a king with such insight, and people flock to him for answers and the meaning of life. However, because we are all human, there's going to be something in our lives that get the better of us at times. So if you are reading Solomon's life story in 1 Kings chapter 11, this is where it just goes nuts. King Solomon, he loved countless women from other countries, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, Hittites, as well as the Pharaoh's daughter. All of the countries of the king's lovers were heathen countries that the Eternal One had warned the Israelites about. Do not mingle with them, and do not allow them to mingle with you. They will corrupt you and lead you away from me. They will seduce your hearts to follow their own gods. Solomon was not only a ladies' man to a few women. We are talking 700 wives and 300 mistresses. I don't even know how he accomplished all of that. These women were from all of these countries that God has repeatedly warned his people about over and over in the Old Testament. But even though Solomon was wise, he allowed their influence and false gods to seep into their life rather than the Eternal's. That is an important note, because we have to remember, just because God provides us wisdom at times doesn't mean we're always going to listen, right? We need to be in community with him consistently. Otherwise, when we mingle with other people or close proximity to us that are not good, or they're not good for our ideas, We start listening to their ideas and their answers before his, and we get further from God, and we end up in the completely opposite direction. The second is places. Let's say wherever you work, or you just stay at home and you just follow a budget to a T. You work hard, you make smart decisions, and you follow through on your goals. And in that place, you're doing wise. You're really rocking it. However, later that night, the night winds down, you put the kids to bed, you decide you're just going to scroll through a couple things. It happens to be Amazon Prime Day. Okay, so there's just a couple things that go in your cart, and after midnight, you're realizing, why have I purchased over 300 things of useless things? That includes myself. I had to get an Instant Pot, okay? But seriously, we know where the places we go frequently that are not filled with reasons, blessings, and mercy. Maybe certain places, they trigger old habits for you. I think we've all had that feeling inside of us, and I know it's the Holy Spirit. It's talking to you in that moment. When we are in that place and just something, it just doesn't feel right, and you feel like either it's time to go or to stay, and we need to choose to remove ourselves or not. Finally, it's the things in our life. Each of us face different struggles. Maybe you are unhappy in your marriage. You are disappointed that this is not where you plan to be at this point in your life. Someone you love is hurtling towards destruction. Your kids or your coworkers do not take you seriously. Sickness, anxiety, lies, anger, past hurts have been bubbling up, and we just keep pushing it down with food, shopping, Netflix, removing ourselves from community and people who love us, just because we want to do anything that can numb the struggles just for a little bit. When we go to the wrong people, the wrong places, and we do unreasonable things, when we are tired or worn out, unsatisfied, and upset, instead of turning to Jesus, who has taken all of that for us when he died on the cross, you know what he's saying? He's saying, come to me. I know you're hurt and you're searching and you're lonely, but give that over to me. Let me fill you with my wisdom. And you know what he does for us? He's gentle. He's reasonable. He's overflowing with mercy and blessings. He gives us the generous gift of his word, the Bible, and we are allowed to talk to him, the God of creation, in prayer whenever we like. When we pray and ask for wisdom, he will give it to us. James 1:5 says, if you don't have all the wisdom needed for this journey, then all you have to do is ask for it, and God will grant all that you need. He gives lavishly, and he never scolds you for asking. If we are seeking Jesus for answers, he's not going to let us down. It may not be immediate, but allow him to work in your heart. And it's okay for us to take time to think things through. I don't think wisdom needs to be a fast food drive-through. Psalm 90:12 says, teach us to number our days so that we may truly live and achieve wisdom. As we age, it doesn't always equal wisdom. We still have to learn like that wise old owl. Wisdom depends on our experiences, and we can use the stories of our lives to help others too. We can take the hard truths that we have learned and impart that as we grow in our own spiritual maturity. Our passage ends today with, you can develop a healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoys its results only if you do the hard work of getting along with each other, treating each other with dignity and honor. We need to celebrate wisdom in other people. People are inspired by others' wise decisions, and we need to encourage that. If we foster a community that is healthy, we are going to see some fruit in our lives and theirs. So how do we encourage wisdom in others and ourselves? We need to be thankful for our friends who are bold enough to tell you something when you are in a place to listen. And that can be hard because we are prideful and we're just not open hearing what they have to say at times. Choose those wise people to speak into your life. Utilize them as mentors. Go out to coffee, a walk, or dinner with them, and talk about what's rolling around in your mind. Proverbs 19:20 says, "Listen to advice and accept instruction, that you may gain wisdom in the future." Listen to what they say, take it back to God, and through some refining, through this process of our life, we are going to begin to discern what God is leading us towards. In a TED Talk, Barry Schwartz said, "You don't need to be brilliant to be wise." Thank God. So can anyone have wisdom? Yes. If they choose to pursue and listen to what God is asking of them, and we then realize our experiences that certain people, places, and things can detract us from his good judgment. James is right. Real wisdom, God's wisdom, begins with a holy life. I pray for all of us as we gain his insight, we choose to listen, we're humbled, and we accept his wisdom into our lives.